almost disappeared from the Tunisian sky. Rommel knows Montgomery is getting stronger, so he orders a spoiling attack to disrupt British preparations for March 6th. However, his subordinates attack in the south after disagreeing with his recommendations to attack along the coast. In any case, Montgomery's dug in tanks and anti-tank guns, including powerful 17-pounders, are waiting for them. The silly buggers came right at us, didn't they? Some of us who were in the early desert fighting expected a Rommel flank attack, something clever. It never happened. They kept coming straight across the plain. Montgomery put it more succinctly. The Marshal has made a balls of it. Although only 94 Axis troops are killed, Rommel loses up to 56 tanks in what is his last action as a commander in North Africa. On March 9th, the Desert Fox finally agrees to take sick leave in Germany. Montgomery now launches his attack on March 16th. It will be frontal charge supported by a wider flank, largely made up of New Zealand, Indian, and French Senegalese soldiers. The frontal assault initially has some success, establishing a bridgehead across the Wadi Zigu, but Allied troops soon lose the position with heavy casualties. Frustrated, Montgomery prioritizes the flanking maneuver. Indian troops use their mountain experience to move through rough terrain and attack from behind the Mareth line, while the New Zealand Corps rush further to the Axis rear, breaking through Axis defenses on March 26th. Rommel's replacement, General Giovanni Mess, falls back to the narrow Wadi Akarit position, but Allied forces overrun his lines by combined artillery bombardment, frontal charges, and mountain infiltration. The situation is now dire for the Axis troops. Hitler hopes Tunis and Bizerta can become meat grinders to deplete Allied forces and delay a European invasion, but morale and equipment is lacking. By April, von Arnim's 5th Panzer Army has 150,000 men and 150 tanks against 210,000 Allied troops and 1,200 tanks. Patton also regains U.S. positions at Gafsa and Senate Station, eventually linking up with the 8th Army on April 7th. Now 8th Army clashes against the new Axis positions at Infidavil. Again, the first assaults fail, but mountain troops, including Gurkhas, backed up by accurate concentrated artillery fire, break the position open. For every Axis artillery shell fired, the British fire up to 30. The U.S. II Corps, now redeployed in the north under General Omar Bradley, also batter their way towards Bizerta with renewed confidence. Von Arnim sends Major Hans von Luck to Berlin to plead for an evacuation, but Hitler refuses to see him. When Hitler finally allows an evacuation in late April, it is of little use since the Axis lack air cover and shipping. On May 7, 1943, the Allies capture Bizerta and Tunis. On May 13th, Axis forces surrender along with tens of thousands of their troops. Many are Italian non-combat and colonial troops, but many are also German veteran units like the German veteran 15th and 21st Panzer and 90th Light Divisions, which surrendered to a man. A contingent of the elite Hermann Göring Division that fought in Tunisia is also captured, though a few escaped to Sicily. Almost immediately, Allied troops refer to the Tunisia campaign as Tunisgrad, a reference to the recent Soviet victory at Stalingrad. This is due not only to the tough nature of the fighting, but also the seemingly decisive nature of the victory and the number of prisoners taken. Tunisia was not an easy victory for the Allies, and the disasters at Sidi Bou Zid and Kasserine Pass tainted British perceptions of the Americans for some time. In total, the Allies suffered 70,000 casualties in Tunisia, with the US losing 2,715 dead, 9,000 wounded, and 6,500 missing or captured in its first major theater. Of course, these numbers are not close to Soviet losses at Stalingrad, but they are a large portion of the roughly 240,000 Allied casualties for the whole North African theater since 1941. Axis losses in Tunisia are up to 62,200 with 12,200 killed, also far less than Stalingrad. Similar to Stalingrad, though, the capture of Tunisia trapped and destroyed a large Axis force of over 250,000 men. Army Group Africa may not have been as central to Axis war plans as 6th Army at Stalingrad, but it was still a significant Axis investment in manpower and resources. Its defeat also eliminated tens of thousands of experienced troops, as well material that Germany desperately needed elsewhere. In fact, the Germans redirected transport planes earmarked for Stalingrad to Tunisia, meaning they couldn't supply either location properly. The Luftwaffe struggled to recover from the losses it suffered over Tunisia and the Mediterranean theater, which amounted to 41% of the entire air force. The victory was also total, since the Axis would never be able to return to Africa or even plan to. They would instead from now on move into a defensive posture concerned with the defense of their key territories. Meanwhile, Allied, especially British, confidence grew after the disasters of 1939–41. Despite the Kasserine defeat, Allied forces were starting to perfect an operational doctrine that combined high levels of mechanization with sophisticated logistics and thorough battle plans. This allowed them to effectively translate their advantage in industrial capacity onto the battlefield. Meanwhile, the victory showed the German way of war was faltering. German principles of Auftragstaktik, or mission command, which emphasized autonomy and flexibility at lower levels of command, were coming unstuck against Allied material superiority and firepower. Such methods worked well in the early war against inexperienced and unprepared enemies, but the Allied method left little room for mistakes the Axis could exploit. As historian Paddy Griffith concluded, German tactical analysts might growl resentfully that US tactics were inflexible, plodding, and all about material superiority. But the fact remained that the Germans could not win such a battle. The rest of the fateful year of 1943 would only make this trend even clearer. But the Allied method still has weaknesses. Much of the material needs to be brought across the Atlantic, and although Germany is retreating on land, they're still on the attack at sea, which the Allies need to stop if they hope to invade Europe anytime soon.